Hello everyone and welcome back to the Amazon European Masters, day 3 of the group stage here right now. I am Samuel, initialized Hapgood, otherwise known as Hapgood number 1, joined by my brother Hapgood number 2, otherwise known as Alexander Nymera. Hapgood, how are you doing, buddy?
Starting off the day with some brotherly bickering, but we have to talk about, of course, something outside of that. Of course, wonderful to be here for our first cast on this stage, but we've seen the games happen over the last couple of days, and we have had some corkers. Can't wait to start off today.
I mean, exactly that. We've got some incredible stuff coming up. We've already had 2 days. We've got 2 more to go, and we'll go back over yesterday's ones. To begin with, Atleto put up a fantastic fight, but it wasn't quite enough versus the Unicorns.
No, and I look at that set from Gabo, and he's so nearly won half of those fights for them, but you look on the other side, Lurox and Ruby, they have been absolute stars for you.
They've just been monsters, and then this one was a very interesting one with, of course, the Leandri's Misfortune coming out trump.
And, you know, you look at Game Legion coming in from Prime League, first seed, they have high expectations. Phantasma, maybe less so, but this game was a pretty solid affair from Game Legion. They did put that game to bed.
Absolutely, and this one was a very exciting upset.
We were talking about teams with high expectations. Kesso maybe have the highest of all expectations in this tournament. And they found a stumbling block. They went late game and they got outplayed.
Fantastic early game, but those mid and late game fights from TEG were just next level. Incredible stuff to come back in and hold on in that game. And then our boys from the NLC, X7 ran rampant over Carmine.
And before the tournament, I was speaking a lot about how I think actually X7 are a bad matchup for Carmine Core. I thought they would win this matchup. I didn't think they'd go 13-0, not even give up a single kill against the back-to-back champions. It was unceremonious, this defeat for Carmine Core.
Yeah, absolutely great stuff from X7. Slightly frustrating for Carmine Core, but then this one was another NLC win. Bifrost coming back in the mid-game to really win out some of those fights.
And it was on the back of huge team fights in the most Bifrosted fashion. We know this team loves to get towards those 5v fights. This one was surprising to me. I didn't think that BDSA would be dropping a win in this game, but Bifrost came through and they really surprised me.
They very much did, and Crown Shot looked terrifyingly first. Wasn't quite enough when Furies Veigar was throwing down the kind of cages we saw in that cage. Extraordinary stuff.
And moving on to the next one, of course, this was probably the most maybe intriguing game for me throughout the entire game of the day, because I think that LDLC, they tend to play a certain style. Again, they tend to be a bit more slow in the early game, play towards the later team fights. But Bisons, when they're in the game, always make things a little off meta. They make things a little more interesting. We saw Yike pick up the Kha'Zix. We saw that Bisons were not ready for that, and that was a really big game from LDLC.
It really was, and we've already had some exciting picks and stuff, but Kha'Zix was definitely not on my list of potential surprise stuff. Really excited to see that, and then, you know, X-Kick on that Zeri. He's so good at the champion.
He was, and X-Kick has, you know, continued to really impress us throughout the games that we've seen so far. But we're still only 2 games.
I know.
Maximum for the teams. Not every team has played even their second game yet. We're going to go, of course, see another set of 3 groups out of our 4 playing another game today.
Absolutely. And we've got ourselves some standings coming up, so we can see exactly how things have shaped up thus far in the tournament. Thank you so much, production. You can see Group A right now is Vitality B and Eintracht Spandau looking pretty dominant in there. Group B, Game Legion X7, and then of course for C and Wizard or even everyone's tied up in that one after the madness of yesterday. Group D, again, pretty distinct top and bottom set of teams there.
But even then, I look at a team like Bison's and Sad at 0-2 and I'm thinking, heck, they had high expectations for themselves. Expect the second round robin, when that does come through, to be really dangerous for a lot of those teams who are sitting pretty on that 2-0 right now.
Absolutely. I think we have got to zoom in a little bit on Group C here as well, looking at the madness that's yet to be decided. Of course, I don't think we're going to get too much of that.
They're not playing today,
but keep your eyes on that tomorrow, because there's a lot to go on there. But for us, of course, I think and stuff as well, like X7, Game Legion facing off later today. I am so excited for that match. Yes.
And speaking of when they're facing up later today, I guess we should probably have a look at the games we've got in store for you. Because you spoke about X7 versus Game Legion. It's NLC versus Prime League. I know we cast from the same studio. All the bad blood there, it's kind of all in good faith, but this is where it really gets serious on the day. This could be a game which really determines the entire group. I have a lot of faith in X7 playing through Haru, but Game Legion are coming in, again, we said with a couple of the other teams, they're coming in with high expectations.
We've got a double LFL versus Prime League setup between Unicorns and Second Edition and LDLC. Eintracht Spandau going to Vitality B. Oh, that's pretty exciting as well. Carmine Core looking to bounce back after games yesterday. A lot of very interesting matchups, I think it's completely fair to say. I'm also pretty excited to see how a Go Rogue and Svezda do manage to get that name correct the second time around.
But to kind of set up some of the games later into the day, we'll talk about the first game of the day when we get a little bit closer to it. But let's zoom in a little bit closer onto one of the particular games that's coming up later with that Phantasma versus Carmine Core, because Carmine Core, they came from Plains, undefeated. They went 6-0 in their group, went 2-0 in their elimination match after that point. But in their first game versus X7, they started to show some stumbling blocks. So for me, when that game comes up later, I'm really looking for Karmine Corp to solve their early game issues. They've occasionally walked into a couple of bad skirmishes, and now actually it's going to be very interesting for me to see whether Phantasma can punish them. The numbers, well, we've only had a number of games, and I'm not a big fan of low sample sizes in our statistics. This one is standout. We saw what happened versus X7. I think Karmine Corp, when we see them later in the day, will want to really stamp home some early game improvements versus Phantasma, because that could be an area where they might falter again.
And you can see it on screen right now. On the left is Karmine Corp in the play-in stage. Up 57 odds to yes as it goes on. And then you look on the other side, big goal discrepancy. Yes, again, it's just the one game. Yes, it was against X7, who were a fantastic early game team. But you've called it out. Maybe some early game issues. They need to be a bit careful with those. But of course, it's not just Karmine Corp playing on today. We've got some other teams that we do want to be keeping our eyes on. So we're going to have a quick look as well at those Prime League versus LFL matchups. It's going to be very exciting. And Eintracht Spandau versus Vitality B, another one of those matchups which could be very difficult to read.
For sure, and I think that when we're looking at the big regions facing off, we've seen LVP versus LFL. We saw how that went. This is kind of like the next kind of like big ticket heavyweight matchup to see. So particularly when I am looking at those matchups later, that's going to be very interesting to see where the benchmark lies.
Absolutely. And of course, Eintracht Spandau were right up there as potentially the Prime League's #1 seed for a long part of their season. And they kind of had a shock upset potentially to a lot of people in that finals to Gamer Legion. So I'm sure they're ready and raring to prove that they are one of the favorites potentially for this tournament. That would be a very big moment for them if they can manage it. We've also got to talk about that other LFL versus Prime League matchup, and also our first game of the day, namely Unicorns of Love Sexy Edition versus none other than the LFL first seed LDLC.
I appreciate how you commit to the full name.
Of course.
Something that, we've given this God-given right to say this.
It's amazing. I love it. Thank you, Unicorns.
But speaking of that, they have some charisma in that mid lane from Ruby. And I really want to talk about this guy, Ruby, because he has been stellar in this tournament so far. I actually think it was Blackgator, one of the Prime League's analysts, who was saying a couple of... I didn't speak to them directly about this, but I heard through the grapevine. They were saying, actually, look, Unicorns are our third best team. I'm not sure I totally agreed, not to say I'm going to overrule anyone else's opinions, but from the games that we've seen from the play-ins, this guy, particularly Ruby, has been ahead in lane so much. Individually, as a player, he's been starting to take over the map. In 8 out of his 10 games throughout the entire tournament so far, between the 2 games of the main stage and the 8, rather, of play-ins, he's been ahead in 8 out of those 10 games. Now, one of them was against the Ivern mid, so we don't count that one as much, but still, Ruby has been a player which really, on an individual level, has started to shine.
7 out of 9 games plus an asterisk is probably the way we'll put it. And, this is a guy who...
We make like a little tree.
Like, I made some notes about who the teams this guy's played for before. And, like, you're looking at this guy who's played for former Freak of Freaks player. He's a former Rogue Warriors player, with various places. He's been around the block for the LCK, for the LPL. Yes, there's some substitute stuff going on there, but he is still a very tenured, very experienced player with a lot of top-level talent. You can see it as well in his kill participation. While Prime League's third seed here is the Unicorns of Love, their mid-jungle duo is potentially not the third best mid-jungle duo in the whole league for them. And you saw it there with the kill participation. So much of the success for this team comes through that duo.
Yeah, but then you look over to the other side, LDLC are one of... We talked about Fnatic Team Castle a little earlier, but then you look at LDLC, maybe X7 as well, as pre-tournament, real deep run finals candidates. And LDLC are the LFL team, which are still undefeated. They're 2-0 and they're coming in. And the really interesting thing about this matchup in particular, I feel like both these teams have quite similar styles. I think that they're going to be able to try to play safer early and then go into those larger team fights. Well, that's what I thought. Until the Kazakhs got locked in yesterday, things got thrown out the window. But I think on paper, this matchup should be a real slugfest in the 5v5s, and I cannot wait to see that.
Fantastic. And just have a look at some of these lineups here. This is, of course, the Unicorns of Love Sexy Editions lineup. I love saying that name. Ivo, Lurox, Ruby, Reptile, Dreamer Ace. Ruby and Lurox we've highlighted already, and what a pairing they are. Reptile as well, though, if you can get him through to that mid game, if you can get him through laning phase, he's such a good team fight AD carry.
And actually both bot laners, Reptile and Dreamer Ace, this is their first EU Masters as well. We talk about the history of some of them. Got to talk about the new grassroots as well, the new growth coming into this. And this team is a very intriguing balance of some of that tenure and some of that new spark.
Absolutely, and it's kind of what you want to see out of ERL stuff as well, that kind of development, some of the spicier rosters you can get through. And this is a team that finished 5th in the regular season for the Prime League. They were kind of a bit out there, and then they had this incredible run through playoffs. And yes, they got defeated by Gamer Legion in the end, but there was some serious excitement for them.
And of course, there is another side to this matchup. We have, of course, the real big fish out of the LFL. Maybe not expected at the start of the season to be, you know, the title candidates and everything, but after those playoffs, after dealing such a harsh defeat to Karmine Corp in that first match in those playoffs, and then a hard-won victory in that 5-game series in the LFL finals, the Foxes are coming through so strong, and LDLC are a serious team to watch. We cannot say that enough.
Reminder again, this is a former EU Masters champion team back from 2020 spring. They have been around the ERL system for such a long time. They've had some incredible players through their doors, and this roster is looking to be another one of those rosters. Ike, of course, was over on Immortals for a bit when, ironically, LDLC won for the first time. Got to see what they can do here today with this incredible lineup that's done incredible things in the LFL and looking to do incredible things at EU Masters.
And your other players which are really hyped up on here, you know, Yike is, even though I believe this is their first EU Masters as well, maybe the jungler to watch, one of the players to watch across the entire ERL system. You hear coaches talking about it, you hear other players saying, yeah, I really respect this guy. You got players like Ragnar, been in the TCL for a very long time too. This is, again, kind of a culmination of real talent coming into these star-studded rosters.
And shout out to Ragnar in particular. His Ornn the other day was so good. I'm very excited to see what they can do, and very shortly into this match. So I do want to ask you, mate, where on earth should we even be looking to figure out how this matchup works out?
So I think for me, it has to come down to the jungle matchup. We talked about hero building on either side, but when we look at Yike and how he's managed to not just solidify his lanes like we're seeing in the LFL playoffs, but also explode the playoffs too in terms of these early lanes, that's going to be the real matchup to see if they can control or adapt.
I'm so excited to see what they can do, but enough about us, enough about some hypotheticals, because we've got some, not hypotheticals, some actualities here as we head into picks and bans. Unicorns on the blue side, LDLC on the red, and some bans coming through already. Jarvan, Veigar off for Unicorns right now. It's the Zeri on the other side for LDLC who do not want to give Reptile that option.
No, we did see XT, of course, pick up that one game too, and I believe the Zaya was the other one. Something like an 814 DPM game.
It was
very high.
Yeah, that was the Zaya.
Avert thine gaze. But we're seeing a lot of very interesting bans coming through here because there's a lot of team fight front to back in terms of the Veigar, in terms of the Zaya, but the Jinx does get let through. I don't think this is an uncounterable pick, but having the Zaya off the table does remove one of the premier all-weather champions.
Of course, on the other side, the Aphelios is still up. So if we go back to the old faithful matchup that we've seen just so much this season, by far the most prominent AD carries, I think it's fair to say, that's probably a likelihood. Still got to wait and see what they decide to lock in. Ari would make a lot of sense. Another one of those picks that's been very high priority, which I'm sure you've been exceptionally happy about.
So again, for those of you not know my own standing, I've played a lot of Ari.
Yes, he has.
I started back to season 4, accrued 1 million points or whatever. Not been best pleased with the EU Ari so far. Caps was awesome in the LEC finals, picking up the Magi's, which I think you should always be building. But when I went back to watch some of the footage from the LFL's actually got some decent players in there too. You look at Aker as well as this one player of the Ari, and I'm like, okay, knows how to start playing the mid-game fights very, very cleanly and start skirmishing around the board. I think that Yike, Thos, and Aker have a very good synergy between them. This is good signs with good tools for LDLC to play around that mid lane early.
But the response, though, is LeBlanc, Lee Sin. You hit level 6 and you have got kill threat. Heard from some of the pros, some of the coaches behind the scenes that if you're drafting into Ari, Lee Sin and LeBlanc is one of the ways you can actually make her life really difficult.
And it's in a similar kind of vein to talking about the Veigar, right? If you kind of end up winning out the jungle or the bot lane matchup and start flowing that towards mid, Ari doesn't get to play these matchups the way that she wants to. If they're completely isolated, it's a skill matchup and Ari can often get a prio and start trading well. But when you have a Lee Sin that can already start getting early routes into mid, you're gonna have to see now some of that mid jungle and then that support synergy too coming in from the LFL first seed.
So one team's going to get themselves support counter pick likely here. One team's likely going to get themselves top lane counter pick unless there's some real shenanigans with lane stops. I mean, Cabochard does play the Lee Sin top, for example. That might be a world where Ibo does the same here. I doubt it, but still got to keep our eyes on it. You can see with the bans here as well, the differing priorities for Unicorns, trying to get a decent matchup for Ibo.
It is interesting, you know, you mentioned the Karmine Corp top lane, stuff like that, even though they're not on the Rift. Lots of these players and lots of these teams will have their own scrim bubbles. Oh yeah, know that happens, particularly when you've got like the LEC going into its later playoffs. They start scrimming ERL teams at the top end too. Interesting to see now if anyone's picked up any kind of flavoring from the teams that they've been practicing with.
So in that ban of the Ornn for me as well from Unicorns. Speaking of flavor, Ragnar's Ornn the other day, I think it was 5-0-11 or something like that. I forget the number of assists. It was very large numbers. Did absolutely incredible stuff on that one. Instead, we'll go for the blind pick now and leave Ivo with the counter pick option, which Unicorns do like to go for if they get the chance.
So now you are looking at lots of ability to play around actually both sides of the map here from LDLC. I mean, you could potentially lock in something like a Tom Kench if you want to just leave bot side alone, play towards the Gnar on that top side. I mean, I'm looking through this. You don't have a lot of your traditional Jace Gnar counter picks because the Jace is gone. Camille could be an option if you want to hyper play on top side for the side of the Unicorns, but locking in that Nautilus gives them a little more time to think about that top lane option.
It does, and they've got to sort of consider here what that option is. I feel like the Camille does work with what they have. It's a lot of pick. They can make that happen, but maybe they feel like going a little bit more weak side, something they can hold on a little bit better because, you know, you've got a Jinx Nautilus. That's something you can play through as well pretty happily.
And something like that, Gragas, I don't know if anyone was watching the LPL playoffs earlier today, Gragas has been starting to come back in some champions' wheelhouses. You don't tend to blind pick it anymore because of stuff like Aatrox still being quite powerful and able to deal a lot of damage to Gragas in the laning phase and force him off the wave in ways that other champions can't. But picking it into that Gnar gives the Unicorns an ability to, again, have a front-to-back option, have a tankier, disruptive front line to support this more skirmish-heavy backline for them. Then on the other side of LDLC, if you start going towards the bigger team fights, we've seen what Renata can do. Bifrost picked up a huge win with a couple of off the back of a couple of Renata rolls yesterday.
Absolutely, and shout out to Viper who shouted out M-Test yesterday, who basically said the thing with the Renata rather into
the
other new champion, exactly. Yes, Nautilus has an okay lane, but the moment mid-game fights start happening, it's just horror for Nautilus because you get ulted, you root your own teammates. It's just not a good place to be.
I think the only worst one I've seen is a Camille that charged up a Q2 and then just deleted the ready carry with the choke. I thought that was the worst one I've seen.
That's pretty nasty. Renata ults, hostile takeovers, very powerful stuff, and we've seen the drafts as they stand now, waiting of course to get onto the Rift. I feel like both teams have kind of got a draft they're okay with, but there's the one exactly anyone you're kind of thinking, yes, this is the one I would rather be piloting if I was this team.
So nameplates on, I do like what LDLC have. I think a lot of what the Unicorns want to do is play through mid-jungle, and I think that when you've got LDLC who are so good at supporting their lanes early on, you're not going to get that same arc option. You're going to struggle in the side lanes against these champions, and I think that's going to be an X factor which LDLC can play around.
X factors, so important here in these best of ones, in these group stages, in these matches that mean so much to fans and leagues and fandoms around Europe and beyond. Prime League versus LFL. LFL's first seed, currently undefeated, here looking to continue to stamp their mark. Unicorns on the other side, remember, currently 10-0 undefeated right now.
They've got some pretty okay numbers themselves at that point now, LDLC. Choosing to stack early on. We've seen, actually, a lot of level 1 stacks in the ERLs, in UMass, in Amazon University.
I knew you were going to do it once!
So, okay, fun story for everyone. So, I started casting another... So, obviously, this is Amazon European Masters. I cast something called UEM once, and it's completely crossed the wires in my head. So, I'm going to do my best to make sure that it's completely eradicated from this one. But still, as we've seen over the Amazon European Masters, level 1s have started to be a bit more prevalent, and you can see that they're starting to trade around vision on the various jungle starts, and Ruby has now got that for the Unicorns.
There's no sweepers in inventory for the LDLC right now to get rid of that ward, so it will be scouted. They'll know what's going on in terms of this.
Okay, but LDLC know that Unicorns know that they are doing this, right? So there is...
the next level.
There's the next level, so Yike potentially able to play around that. He's doing a solo start on the red buff, and both junglers heading towards that bot side from the way it looks right now.
And considering we set up some heroes, we set up some matchups, namely the jungle matchup, the fact that the first thing both teams do is fight to try and get some vision to play those mind games tells you a lot about how the teams value those early jungle pathings. It's Lee Sin, Jin Zhao. They've been pretty prevalent across the split, but their early pathing, their early plays, so critical to the success of these champions.
But just a quick reminder, this is of course patch 12.6, so that'll be partly why people may be asking, well, where's the Hecarim? Where are XYZ champions? Well, Hecarim's been nerfed. These two champions are still playable. Jin Zhao had fairly hefty nerfs, particularly to the ult duration. It went from 5 seconds to 4 across some other nerfs as well, and that does mean that Yike will have to play a little closer to the limits to try and eke out that extra amount of value to kind of be on par with what Jin Zhao used to have in previous patches.
Absolutely. So while he was prevalent early on, as we said, he's fallen off that little bit with those nerfs he said, and time to see whether Yike can still make it work. He's certainly got the pedigree, I feel. We need to see how it actually plays out with both junglers pathing towards the bot side at the same time.
They are pathing towards bot side. We might see a 3v3. We might see a 4v3 as well, though, because one thing which happens in the Ahri LeBlanc matchup, it is a skill match. We said about how it can turn out when it's either isolated or affected, but you kind of play chicken with having the minion dematerializers. You can take it on either side, and if LeBlanc takes it and Ahri doesn't, you actually do get a bit more wave control in this matchup than you are used to having, and we can see that Ruby has done that here. Now, if that leads into a 4v3 bot, that'll be where the real value of it comes through. LDLC, question is on them denying that and stopping LeBlanc's maybe unexpected pro in that mid lane from affecting the map too much.
So worth pointing out as well, both mid laners here with the Ignite, no teleports to be seen.
I appreciate that a lot.
Absolutely, more damage, more all-in options, and Lurox is here. The chains will land. Flash still going to come through the charm lands, and will that make a difference? Ignite for Ignite means you're going to be at least a 1-for-1 trade, but First Blood still goes the way of Unicorns.
And that damage calculation from Ica is critical, because when Lee Sin is on the other side of the map, you realize you can cancel that resonating strike from that Q. You stop that dash coming through. Maybe save yourself. It says, you know what? I've got the damage. We're going to try and outplay this. Tower shots come through. Ruby goes down. Important 1-for-1. And that gives Ica the money to get a Dark Seal themselves on their first back. And that means that both of these mid laners now packing that. Going to be even more snowbally.
Could look for this. Lurox was just hanging around. Of course, doesn't have a flash, but he's got the level up advantage here. And the red buff, actually. So I'm not sure Yike wants this. He could be a spot of bother. Does have the knockup from the free Talon Strike and the speed up there from the Speed Shrine, so you could think about this. With DOS roaming over, there will be little more to be found, and a moment there where Lurox was definitely thinking of going further.
There was a, I mean, did you see there again, the red buff on one side of the matchup? But again, going back to this mid lane matchup and how this kind of works in the mid jungle 2v2, again, lots of kill threat onto the Ahri from this duo. You can get Prio, but see right there, chooses not to hold on to that charm, gets Ruby back into tower range, Ignite goes down, damage calculation does work out.
Absolutely, both mid laners trade both summoners with the additional flash from Lurox, but First Blood did go over, though I think Ica would be super angry about the fact that he managed to at least go 1-for-1, as you said. The rest of the map, though, playing out about as expected right now. Ragnar on the Narc getting a bit of an edge in that top side, but again, range into melee, Gragas being Gragas.
Gnar being Gnar.
Exactly. Nothing entirely surprising in that.
And this actually is going to be a matchup which we will need to track. We're going to talk about the win conditions and the loss conditions of each of these teams. I think that the big win condition, well, rather, maybe the loss condition from the Unicorns is letting this Gnar getting out of hand. Because if LDLC want to play around side lanes with an ahead Gnar, the LeBlanc's not going to answer that particularly well. The Gragas isn't going to answer that particularly well. You already see CS advantage starting to be built up by Ragnar, and we have seen how good this player has been recently. We talked about that on. Now we're looking to see if he can do it on the split pusher and the Gnar. Of course, no surprise, well, that Ivo in the playing stage was damn good as well. I remember some of the Graves level ones he was doing is in the mid lane. Dreamer Ace just pops the flash. I was expecting not a lot, and instead they'll get in and get the root. Ica goes down to Lurox. Resonating strike secures the kill, and pop goes the Fox. Fox and LDLC, who have so often been the team which can protect mid lane very well, because Yike is around, because DOS is around, have given up now 2 kills onto this Ahri mid, and you were talking about in draft saying, okay, yeah, you can pick the Veigar into the Ahri, but you can also do stuff like kill combo mid jungles like the Lisa and LeBlanc. That's come to turn out very, very effectively now for the Unicorns.
Yike's going to get rooted here and going to take a bit of an acid trade. It's going to be a double chain. I think he's just dead, isn't he? Yeah, he's gone.
It's just gone. And Ruby, this player we highlighted, player with history, player with pedigree, is really starting to roll. You know, that last kill, that last assist, that's going on to a Dark Seal as well. Ruby's starting to roll.
So he really needs to rename the Kaiser Cheese, because it's not just Ruby he's going on, he's predicting a riot in the mid lane, come out with 3 kill participation right now, 100% of the kills in the mid lane. It's been going great for right now for the LeBlanc.
Well, I appreciate that. I have no idea how much like UK charts music.
Okay, Kaiser Chiefs are actually relatively famous.
Okay, well,
it's like I said, 2 most famous.
I hadn't thought about them for a great number of years, so while I
very reasonable.
There we go. Anyway, that's
You're welcome.
Now, and we have a shining gem in that mid lane who's starting to really get off the ground. And now this is where things start to get a little bit awkward for Ica, because you sat there and you haven't built up anything like Merc Treads. Actually, Merc Treads don't have the most value in this game, but you still kind of need it versus LeBlanc, because otherwise LeBlanc takes a series of hard trades against you and you get into kill range very, very quickly. Wave's starting to get harder to control as well. Ruby has it pushing towards him. Start jumping beyond the wave, start looking for those trades, looking for those chains, and Ruby's now in control of this mid lane. Where do the Unicorns go from here, though? Now, though, you can start going up towards maybe a potential Herald if you can control that mid lane. The the way you organize the map is now kind of in your favor.
Ruby lands another change. That is the 4th in a row I feel I've seen him see, with the one before he got the double change to get the kill onto Yike in the mid lane early on. That's a 5th. Absolutely cannot miss that skill shot right now.
But again, you can see LDLC starting to try and rotate to alleviate that pressure, saying, okay, mid lane matchup's not going as well as we wanted to. That's okay. We have ourselves rotating up towards the Herald anyway. Waves pushed in. And though Unicorns have that winning matchup, they don't manage to block out LDLC from this side of the map. And while they have members in the area, I'm not sure this is a fight you want.
Level 6 on Lurox. The Dragon's Rage is available. Yike there with the Crescent Guard as well. I think it is going to be a contest 4v4 right now, and LDLC backing away from the Herald, and it will reset. Or not quite.
Oh, so no.
Mid lane. Oh, Execute gonna have to flash out. Now gonna try and turn it around. Does start getting towards the crescendo, but he's still gonna go down. There's a bailout. He's still not gonna get quite enough damage and dies out in the mid lane. Ruby cannot be stopped.
But then also around the Herald,
my god, it's still going.
Unicorns are taking the fight there too.
Ragnar's gonna go mega, but aside from that, I'm not sure there's much more to be found. Sonic Wave lands. Will Lurox follow it up? Will do. Uses the Warthog to get out of the Mega Gnar.
And Lurox, I mean, kind of just gives away with the flash for free. Just jumps and goes, haha, I'll see what we can do. But Unicorns take a fight with their individually strong member, and then they also find the extra group confrontation around that Herald. And as much as I said, okay, DOS has come up to try and control this top side of the map, LDLC completely overestimate themselves, it feels like, at this point. See how this all works out. Lurox,
great kick.
Combos into the Gragas cask, and you know that resonating strike, having that extra execute damage, doing more damage against low health targets, it just ends up deleting the area before you can even start using that Spirit Rush. Try and start resetting things, and now game's getting a little out of control, because while you are still playing around a Gnar that can get ahead in side lanes, when the rest of your map has to be responded to at this point to try and bail out your losing rest of the map, you don't get to use that to its full advantage.
Slight correction on my end. Great cask. The kick was also good, but let's be real. iPost Kraken's definitely the one who made that one work. They got the additional kill out of it. At least though, LDLC did get the Herald, so they've got some things to play around. But right now, the snowball has happened where they need it to for Unicorns, and they're looking to punish again.
Yeah, there are some recalls being channeled.
That's going to leave. It's going to leave.
We'll see whether the cancel it's not going to be. There is no Herald here for the Unicorns to put down, but still holding them to account.
They're going to try and catch them on the way back to lane, I think. They were just seeing whether there was any more research.
No, because they didn't see under that tower.
Right.
LeBlanc jumps forward, sees what's happening, didn't have full vision under it. X-Kick, DOS, able to get back to lane. LDLC though, as much as we talked about Unicorns having the advantage, they have themselves the gold lead, they have themselves the first dragon, blah, blah, blah. Only 1k down. It's not lights out yet. Plenty of ability to play around the power spikes that you do have. You've got the level 6 mark on your Aphelios. That tends to be a big moment in your matchup versus Jinx. You have a bit more kill pressure. Already talked about Renata into the Northwest too. Having the ultimates on this duo lane means that LDLC do have a point of power around Execute and DOS. The question is, does that even matter when LeBlanc is holding to account so heavily?
Indeed. And of course, it's not the first time we've seen the LFL teams struggle a little in the early game and then be incredibly competent in the mid and late games to come back in. The fact they aren't that far behind, even as Ruby lands another change. Lurox looking for the Sonic Wave, lands it. I'm not sure we'll go any further as the rest of LDLC are coming down. That's every single member. Ragnar's going to knock back Lurox. They're going straight in and delete him. Flash Wind becomes lightning, secures the jungler, and now they can start shoving into this mid lane.
All right, so LDLC, they find a way to get into that lane, which is struggling so much, find an advantage against the run of play so far. Gonna be some extra gold back, evens up the gold score, and with that shut, I believe it was a shutdown coming in.
Indeed.
Level the 3 kill, rather. Lee Sin going down at that point. LDLC, again, starting to stabilize.
The kills look good, but the gold back to even is exactly what LDLC want to see. And of course, a lot of that gold is in the likes of Ragnar, who's been playing very well on that Gnar. You can see that before this exit kick was doing fine as well on that Aphelios, despite the one death in the mid lane. And they are in a very competitive point, even if they've been behind the tempo a few times in that mid lane.
Speaking of competitive, right? Zooming out the camera just a little bit more, it looks like there's just going to be towers just being wailed on either side. And you so remember, undefeated teams in that group so far. This is Group D. They're both 2-0. Eka, and force that flash again. But
great charm! Baits it out with the flash, and that means it's a death on Ruby, who thought he had another.
I mean, goodbye Dark Seal stacks. Aka now getting a little more on that side too. And while the Unicorns had that momentary advantage in the mid jungle, Aka starting to make sure that they're still on the board. Doesn't flash away from the chain at the end of it. Of course, being chained is not a stun. It's only that Root able to cast into the side of it, and Ruby jumps straight into the charm.
Love hurts, and so does Ari apparently in this one. It is the best little charm timing you've seen in a while. A couple of those now under the tower where he's managed to punish the attempted dives and at least go 1 for 1. That time he goes 1 for 0. Great stuff from the Ari to come back after being put down relatively heavily early on in the game.
And that's a little worrying side for the Unicorns. Of course, we're talking about how important this matchup is in some ways, in terms of, okay, that LeBlanc can start jumping forward, holding other people to account, and they can do that, of course, because there isn't a huge amount of follow-up CC on the side of LDLC to kind of stop them jumping back, jumping forth. X-Kick might find some follow-up CC coming in here, though. He's getting ulted.
That is a depth charge. Try and time it out with the ultimate, but it's only the Inferno, and not the most damages yet. Turning it back around with the Binding Eclipse, though. Flash away, one final rocket secures it for Reptile.
It gets close. It's double summoners blown from the Jinx, but a kill is a kill, and that's a cannon wave loss to the turret. Again, trading advantages. We talked about this being LFL versus Prime League. Great chance to benchmark these two teams and benchmark how these regions are really coming into this as well. We saw the LFL versus the LVP. Hadn't seen this one just yet. Maybe getting aggressed on the mid lane as that wave comes back into tower. But again, it's great to see that it is such a back and forth contest.
Nice little dodge there with the Mimic Distortion. Throws out another chain, but manages to clear the wave and avoid punishment for doing so, does Ruby's LeBlanc. Now, the rest of Unicorns of Love Sex Edition into the mid lane to try and fight for some of this mid-wave control.
So, the tug of war, and we have, of course, Dragon up in 2.5 minutes. Now it's not going to be on the table just yet. Now it's actually the bot side coming through.
Flash body slam out the cask, and now Ragnar, with no Mega Gnar in sight, is going to try and hop his way out to safety. Doesn't have the flash, but a Sonic Wave flash kick, but that was not what you wanted to see. Sappy comes out, kicks him to safety, and says, "Go home, little Gnar."
And it's the flash used too. That was a flash this Gnar. It was a Gnar without Mega. And now, Unicorns losing the bot side, Ruby getting picked off on the top.
Trying to chain that one up, but the 3 Talon Strike means there's still a knockup that comes through. DOS flashes to secure the kill, and the support gets first one of the game there, but that Renata.
Go with the loyalty program.
Pays back. Dividends.
Pays back a couple of dividends.
5%.
And really compounds the problems.
The interest?
I was trying to think of a way to work that in, couldn't quite work. But now we see LDLC. Again, we talked about them stabilizing for a little while. Now they're doing more than just that. They're in the lead. They have themselves objectives to play around. And though that Dragon wasn't up, they're starting to take neutrals in these towers across the map, and they are starting to really come online.
First turret and then a second turret in short order, punishing the misplays that happen in the bot side with a well-played top side play on the other side. They'll move back to the Herald. And without a teleport or really free reign in the mid lane and control there, I think this is just going to be an easy Herald. It's a decent chain, but a great charm in response as Ruby going to have to try and get out here, but he just burns down.
Down, and actually this is one of the great reasons you take Ignite to LeBlanc. She goes into clone, means you can't land any of your point and clicks. You can do it with the Ignite. Lurox going down after.
Gets hit with a hostile takeover, goes down, and now the dive comes through. It's a double ready for Exekick, who's kicking in some heads. They get a mid lane turret, and LDLC come alive in the mid game. Early game, be damned.
Oh, the mid jungle skirmishes were so Unicorns favored for the first part of this match, but they couldn't keep the matchup down. Ica has seriously been playing this matchup well. Ends up playing very close to the minion wave. LeBlanc often uses that as a time to jump through the wave, but the Everfrost doesn't care about that. And as we said, the Ignite kind of gives Ica the ability to get an extra damage proc of the ult down. Wouldn't be able to do that if the clone still made them invisible. Gets the vision from that, gets the kill, snowballs it through with the resets, and the rest of the team coming to help.
They do just that. They get 3 kills effectively out of all that. Jungle, mid, AD carry, all disappear. They get themselves a turret, and now they are up nearly 5,000 gold, more like 4.5, feeling incredibly pleased where this game is at. They've got a Dragon that's spawned, Ragnar has started it up, and LDLC now in firm command of this game. Unicorns yet to even get a single tower, despite the early game moves they were making.
Now, of course, you see Ruby trying to play around the side lane, but he's going to get, the Renata off the speed up.
He had a Mega Naga coming through. There's nothing to be done. He'll go into clone, trying to distort out. They're attacking the clone, but they still managed to get some tricky footwork out of Ruby, but just nothing to be done. Goes down in the side lane for the 5th time this game.
And there's the Herald on top of it too. Yes, Reptile's finding something on the other side. It is an objective bounty. That's where LDLC have got themselves to, the point where they actually are getting objective bounties against them. They're that far ahead, but doesn't stop them taking something across the map. Gale falls away from the casket. Now Ivo's caught out.
He is. Here comes Lurox, but he's backing out. He knows his top laner is done, and LDLC punished the attempted pick in mid onto their AD carry.
It feels like Unicorns, they had that early burst, that early real bout of aggression where they started taking things into their own hands, and it's just fallen apart after that point. LDLC showing their class, showing what they are, coming in as a first seed. One of the most feared regions in the RLs, and starting to take this game by storm.
And in a matter of moments, that Herald got the inhibitor tower. They'll get the inner turret in mid as well. And the foot that has gone down onto the gas pedal has gone straight through the floor and is full-on Fred Flintstone right now, running away with this game in more ways than one.
Oh gosh, and feels like it's going, picking up speed is, this train is going ever downhill, and LDLC managed to push in that bot side, using that Herald to pick up not just that inner tower, but also the inhib tower after that point, and that's led to bot side vision now from LDLC. They get to reset. They get to take whatever part of the map they want to, going towards the top side at this point. And though at this point, you'd normally be saying, oh, you're just around the bot side. Maybe we can play around Unicorn's vision on the top. I see so many wards through there. I would imagine LDLC are going to be able to take control of that too. Unicorn's really going to be struggle to use the Lee Sin, the LeBlanc with their mobility, which needs to be set up by vision after this point. LDLC is starting to really black out the map.
It's already feeling like dire straits right now for Unicorns. It's 3 minutes until the next dragon, about a minute until Baron spawns, just over. It's already feeling like potentially a possibility. Of course, still pretty early on into this game, and you have got 2 items on Jinx. That's great news, but I am beginning to get worried. I am already worried. Even in the beginning, I am well and truly worried for what Unicorns can do in this game. What play patterns do they need to be going towards now, if any?
And this is the worry, right? Because we said once the Gnar gets ahead, you're going to struggle to play through sidelines. Actually, Ruby's been struggling to play through sidelines, even to the hypermobile LeBlanc.
He's down 2 levels!
And just use the distort. That's a
there's the Spirit Rush. The Everfrost does go wide, but they've got enough damage to just finish that one up. Ignite gets another 4th kill of the game from Aker. From 1-3 to 4-3 across this game. Great recovery from the Ahri.
It's the League of Legends player special getting kicked out of the casino. Cooldown counting. Sees the distort, goes forward and goes, well, you can't get away at that point. Commits the Ignite to it again. Make sure that there's no outplay coming in from the clone while your ult can't target invisible targets. Very easy kill. 8 stacks on the Dark Seal. Might I suggest buying the book now, Iker?
The request has gone out. I filmed a little bit of a section of Nymera's reaction to him seeing
the majority.
Caps get it in the LEC final. I think we might get a similar reaction to Vega. Does my brother a solid and buys the book? He's certainly thinking about it, but before that, he's actually gone towards still an elixir of sorcery. We did see the flashbone from Ragnar from punishing the overstay in that top side.
But I think that does show, again, the right mentality, understanding the flow of the game, saying, look, you're probably looking for one big comeback fight around the next dragon or the next Baron. Baron has only just spawned in the last 25 seconds. Having the extra bump of stats, it's not like 2,000. It's also something like 2,000 gold worth of stats for what you have on top of it. Pops the pot. You're going to start sit here watching this go down to the Aphelios weapons, able to just do so much damage to that Baron, and there's no real way to outplay from the Unicorns.
Lurox is trying to get close. It'll be a flash body slam, but doesn't get Aker in because of a well-timed Spirit Rush. Baron is down. The hostile takeover lands onto Lurox, who is forced to go and attack the minions, but on the other side, the fight commences. So much damage goes down, and that is the Nautilus dead already. Dreamer Ace is dreaming with the fishes. Now to see what the rest can happen is Light take it pretty low, but already Aker over the wall. Gets himself another. They do get the shutdown onto Yike, and now maybe Ruby can get this what happened. But Lurox cannot get it done. Just about staying alive, though. Gets away. But look, exit kick. He's still going to go down. Ruby finally taking with the fight. Will now die. Potentially, Ragnar is hopping forward, trying to get more, but he will get bailed out. One more auto will maybe keep him alive. Does fall down. And that is a shutdown onto Lurox, but he is the one man surviving from LDLC as DOS and Aker do stand for the French team.
Dreamer Ace respawns, not able to impact that fight after the point up. But LDLC, again, we said this is the time to fight. They pick up the elixirs. We said that they understood the flow of the game. It's going to flow into a dragon after this point as well. Lots of Baron buffs have been removed after this point. Actually, Ruby doing a great job alongside Lurox to pick up just a few kills on top of it. But again, Unicorns didn't really have the approach secured. They didn't have the vision to really dive as deeply as they wanted. Reptile wasn't there at the start of the fight. And even with all of that said, gets pretty close.
It really does, and honestly, I thought this was going to be a clean wipe, but Ruby, Reptile, Lurox managed to stay alive and play incredibly close to the wire, get away with quite literally murder there.
It's sad here, looking at Ruby, just trying to find the kills that they can, but And that is an important kill, actually. You know, if the AD carries left alive after a brutal fight like that, you are probably losing Inhibitor, maybe even a Nexus turret after that point. But LDLC, not going to be given the easy route to the Nexus on this one, and they will have to finish off this game in what I would assume to be one final fight, especially with the... There we go. The book's been bought. The book's been bought. Thank you, Iker.
Put my hand on his shoulder. There was a little smile just lit up Nymera's face. Beautiful sign to see.
Thank you for your donation to the Shrine of Ari. We'll read books in your honor there, Iker. And now they have the ability to... Well, I mean, the game's already snowballed at this point. Now, Unicorn's looking to try and break this siege. Against the very last, the Baron buff hook goes wide, but you see how dangerous it is against... just a huge amount of damage built up in these items versus LDLC.
And you can see Lurix trying to play with the vision, find a route through, but the flank wards are pretty strong right now for LDLC, making it incredibly difficult for them to get any further, and the siege continues. They get that mid lane inhibitor turret, bot lane inhibitor turret already felt earlier on to the second Herald, if you recall, everybody, and that means that it's just this final inhibitor turret that is the next port of call. Gonna try and shove this one in with what remains of the Baron and siege that one down, as all the while Lurix decided, well, maybe I can at least get the dragon. You can see that in picture right now.
Can do that, but that means that this is not there for any diving threat. They are clearing the waves just fine though, so this is actually going to be snuck out from the end of the noses. LDLC, and it's at least something. It's an objective boundary, of course, too.
Absolutely it is, and right now the inhibitors themselves aren't actually being taken. They'll probably lose this mid lane one, and now they know the Lurix isn't looking for a flank. They'll feel empowered by LDLC to shove in onto this final inhibitor turret. Will start coming through. Lurix has now recalled. Ruby lands another chain. What more can they get done? It's a big chunk onto Yike. He's not back forwards. Aika lands a fantastic Everfrost through the Ivo, trying to get back and out. As in goes Aika, secures a kill on the The Infernum ultimate melts them all alive. 200 years and the Fire and Fury of 1,000 suns secure the entire team of Unicorns of Love Sexy Edition, and it is LDLC who with that will come and secure themselves a 3-0 in this group. The LFL came to play.
LFL first seed. They were playing against Prime League. This was going to be the LFL Prime League clash, the first of the day, second one coming up later. But if we're talking about benchmarking these regions, LFL, slapping home that first victory very hard in this regional matchup.
And thus ends the undefeated run of the Unicorns of Love here at EU Masters. They were 10-0 through players into groups. Finally, they moved to 10-1. And congratulations to them, of course, for a good early game, but they couldn't stick it, unfortunately, the further the game went on.
No, and it was, again, I liked the early aggression. I thought that actually, against LDLC, I expected LDLC to be able to protect their mid lane a little better, and if it actually ended up having to be, Iker bailing out his own lane with just individual plays later into it, and we saw how important that was when, really, after that point, Ruby couldn't side lane, Ruby couldn't impact the game and jump forward, get those big poke combos, and after that point, Unicorns started to fall apart a little bit. Of course, however, it's just that one loss. We'll have a second crack at it in that second round robin. Still sitting pretty with 2 wins, which is ahead of the other two teams, at 0-2 in their group.
Absolutely, and I believe at this point, I'll need to confirm with production, we're going to cut to a quick break, and when we come back, we will have some interviews to go through. And we've got coming up next some interviews, some breakdowns, and of course the game after that, which should be incredibly exciting to watch. It will be Carmine Core versus Team Phantasma, so don't go anywhere. We'll see you in a few moments.